Good morning and welcome to NeoConnect 2020. NeoConnect is NeoCon's online series of resources, programming, and events, all designed to connect the community throughout the month of June. I'm Monica DiBartolo, NeoCon Director of Programming, and I want to thank you for joining us. Today's presentation is the first in a month-long series of CEU webinars hosted by NeoCon. This session is approved for 1 IDCEC credit for interior designers and 1 AIALU for architects. You can find details on CEU credits at the bottom of your screen. So let's dive in. Today's presentation, entitled Designing for Purpose, explores how workplace environments can be designed to help employees be comfortable, safe, and productive. Our presenters will also discuss how to rethink workspaces in a post-pandemic world. Joining us today are 3 industry experts. Primo Orpilla is the co-founder of Studio O&A in San Francisco, California, and Jonathan Webb is Vice President of Workplace Strategy for KI in Green Bay, Wisconsin. They will be led in discussion by Paul Makowski. Paul is Editor-in-Chief of Contract Magazine, a New York-based print and web publication that covers architecture and design from the inside out. Paul is a writer, editor, curator, and strategist. He has written at length about architecture, design, and culture. He has curated exhibitions on topics including Canadian design and architecture, contemporary Norwegian design, and a history of Knoll textiles. So now please welcome Paul Makowski.
Thanks, Monica. I want to say we're honored to kick off this panel as part of the NeoConnect 2020 webinars. There's a lot of content to choose from this month, so on behalf of Contract Magazine and NeoCon, we're all glad you're here today. The COVID-19 pandemic has claimed lives, disrupted economies, and changed our daily ways of life as we know it. And as we grapple with changes to our work and lifestyle amidst the pandemic, that brings us to today's topic, which is how to design with purpose. Part of that is to look at how we envision the post-pandemic workplace and how it addresses safety, choice, and flexibility, in addition to how it adapts to changing circumstances. We have 2 great speakers to discuss the new workplace of the near future, if you want to call it that. First, we have Primo Orpilla, who is, as Monica said, co-founder of Studio O+A, a multidisciplinary San Francisco design firm that has changed the way we think about work and workplace. O+A's groundbreaking designs for Facebook, Microsoft, Yelp, Nike, McDonald's, Slack, and many others have demonstrated the power of design to make the work environment a catalyst for creativity and a vehicle for change. Primo is also a former Contract Magazine Designer of the Year, and in 2016, O+A won the Cooper Hewitt Design Award for Interior Design, and most recently, the ASID's honored Primo with its 2019 Designer of Distinction Award. And next, we have Jonathan Webb, who is KI's Vice President of Workplace Strategy. He leads KI's strategy business unit, serving the business market. Jonathan studies workplace trends, uncovers product gaps, and develops solutions with the KI team. Jonathan also takes part in advanced workplace strategies and documents his findings through white papers, articles, and other publications. His recent publications include Understanding Active Design, The Rise of Human Sustainability, and Collegiate Design, The New Driver for Workplace Design. Partnering with thought leaders like A.E. Com, his publications cover diverse subjects, including sit-stand benefits, designing training environments, and defining work styles. Jonathan holds an MBA from the University of Wisconsin, Oshkosh School of Business, and is a LEED accredited professional. So first, we'll start off our workplace discussion with Primo. And I wanted him to use a really interesting headquarters, which is the Slack headquarters, which debuted about a year or so ago. And it's an example of how we can design with purpose, but also what I've asked Primo is to look at Slack and how he envisions the workplace of the near future. How is that going to change? So take it over, Primo.
Thanks, Paul. Hello, everybody. This is exciting. We don't really, we've not done this presentation for Slack online, so everybody's going to hear the concept. But I think it's an interesting point that, designing with purpose, it's sort of, it should always be there, right? I mean, we should always have something, an impetus or a concept or a narrative behind a piece, because we know that's the best way to really help people sort of connect with the company they're working with, or selecting to work with. So we kind of take that kind of to heart at every single project, is that there needs to be a story or concept that helps align you with what the company's goals are. You heard about transparency, alignment. So a lot of what we did here for Slack was exactly that. We kind of take a sort of a deep dive into what the company is about and try to bring some things that may be not too clear to them as to sort of like their philosophies and goals of how to run a company. So we actually, in the 10 floors that we've designed for Slack, it is really about a journey, and it is specifically about the Pacific Crest Trail. And why the Pacific Crest Trail? Because if anybody who's a hiker, they understand it starts from the desert floor, it goes through Central California, and it goes all the way up to Canada. And the idea is that this trail is sort of, it's connected, and it goes through many different environments. So it goes from desert floor all the way to the glacier top. And along that trail, you might meet people. And the notion here is that the trail becomes sort of the guiding principle for the design. So as you go along a trail, these different typologies or space types or area types or ecotones, you might meet somebody. And the idea is that when you meet somebody, on a trail, there's trail etiquette. And the idea is that you're going to help that person along. And the trail also doesn't mean that the straightest line is the quickest and the easiest and the most efficient way to do things, because then you're going to lose perspective on where you just came from, or maybe have a different vantage point. So you look at problems differently. These all become metaphors for the way this company wants you to handle and be with people. We want you to be helpful. We want you to bring them along. And then we also want you to kind of like look for those different routes, those alternatives. Stuart Butterfield, the CEO, he's done a number of companies. And he didn't even understand how the trail wove into the story, and it became a philosophy of how he really wanted people to kind of think and treat others in the workplace. So it becomes a really, really very, very kind of a guiding and north star for the company. So we took this older building, actually it's not that old, it's probably 15 years old, and we converted it in phases to the new headquarters. So next slide, Jonathan. So you're seeing a number, we call them space types or typologies. Agile work is always about activity-based and selecting a certain situation, a certain posture, a certain feel, an area, if you will, that actually will help your work. So whether it's concentrative work or heads down work. So you're seeing a number of typologies here, and we're really evoking the forest floor or the glacier top, or a clouded afternoon, or going through the forest. The idea is here that every floor is one of those ecotones or one of those environments, and each one of them should feel like it. So we made a very, very kind of a big effort to make the finishes change, flooring types change. So as you enter the floor from the elevator or the stairwells, you begin feeling the different sort of environments that you might go through on the Pacific Crest Trail. So each one of these, and I'm going to weave a little bit of a story about agile work and how well strategized agile work gives you different places to go to that don't necessarily have to be close to people. So you can actually social distance. You can actually, by demand, pick a place that separates you from somebody else. So next slide, Jonathan. In the lobby, we actually have created, this is sort of a base camp, right? You've got little tents, you've got structure like that mimic the base camp of a forest fire. So the forest grounds floor is what this is. And these do feel like little tent structures. The nice thing is they do shield you. They give you a little bit of protection. And again, you're gonna see how everything is separated out. There's these barriers that actually are tent structures, but they do sort of define where you're sitting, and you can space them, and they're all mobile. Next slide. This is actually an area that we call the library. And the notion here is that in a library that you can work, in a open setting, but you work quietly. So there's little nooks and crannies in the library. The idea is that the devices and the computers don't, you know, they don't turn on and be loud. You can work with them, but the idea is that you work quietly. So it's sort of like a library. And then you're seeing structures that mimic something that you might see in a trail, a shelter, a bridge. So the cross beams and everything sort of relates back to that, that object you might find on the trail. Next slide. This is actually another area that you could kind of pop off from your workstation and go work. It's mimicking a tree trunk. It's mimicking sort of like the rings of a tree. As it shoots its seeds out, it begins creating these. And then we're literally sort of like creating a trunk, giving it some some cylindrical shape to it. Next slide. We're getting closer to the kind of top, and it's supposed to mimic northern lights a little bit. It's supposed to mimic glacier snow formations, sort of like growing glaciers, growing from the side, from the top, from kind of all around you, and the light actually becomes cooler. So it's really reinforcing that whole notion of glacier top. Next slide. This is at the top, and you're seeing kind of a lot of, a little bit of a whiter color scheme, lighter, brighter at the top. Again, well, the interesting thing is that this is not where you'd think a lot of executives. This is actually where they invite the entire staff to use this space. So it becomes really, it's a shared space. When you talk about health and well-being, the idea is that the light is all shared. So we've actually put the workstations towards the perimeter, and we brought the conference rooms into the internal core, and we really shared the light. Again, you can self-select where you want to sit. You can really choose to separate out. It's not too dense. You're seeing the workstations inboard here slightly, and then you're seeing conferencing and public spaces towards the perimeter. Next slide. So we're gonna kind of take a real, a pivot to what we're doing now. So O+A is actually setting up its guidelines. I know you've seen a lot of guidelines out there, but the idea here is that we want to also not lose the kind of the human, the joy of coming back to work. So there is, we're creating a little story that go along with some stickers, some things that we might offer that are going to come in the form of a booklet or downloadable. But the idea is that you might use these, and really actually what we're trying to look at is behavioral changes. We know that we can kind of guide you through a space with arrows, different types of signage, but what if these things also promoted different types of behavior? You might not be able to shake hands for a while, so we're kind of putting a little bit of a messaging in there in our stickers and graphics, so that it is not, it's going to be a very kind of tense and sort of a, people are going to feel, the biggest thing about coming back to work is that we want people to feel comfortable and safe. And the emotion and the intensity of like coming back and not feeling safe is going to be overwhelming. So we thought we'd provide a little levity in this, in the way we're doing our stickers, so they're a little less kind of like formal institutional pieces, but a little bit more fun. So hopefully you begin sort of like in guerrilla marketing, sort of stick them up in areas around faucets, around drinking fountains, about not touching. So, you will look at them as opposed to just like glancing by them. They become sort of like a part of your daily routine. So we know that that's very important, and we try to kind of have spaces and different types of details in order to create that feeling. The next slide. So here we are, we're starting to break into the level of detail that you kind of have to think about these spaces. We've taken a lot of information from healthcare and work from healthcare professionals in order to understand the ins and outs of a lobby. Oftentimes when you're having a single door entry, you really need to define the paths, because you will eventually cross. So there's going to be, on top of scheduling and limiting the amount of people at certain times, there are specific routes. And a lot of this is done in basically, you don't want to double load a corridor if you can. You want one entrance and one exit. But in the case where you can't, you sort of have to time it. have to put stickers, or you have to put mirrors up, or something that keeps you from going down that corridor when somebody goes down. So you're beginning to see the level of detail a lobby and reception just take, about where to queue, about where to wash your hands, about where to hold prior to going into the elevator. And then we're treating it like O+A's recommendations, or recommendations, typical application, and then outcomes. So you can kind of refer to this. This booklet will have a complete bibliography that you can refer to, articles. So everything that we feel is pertinent to this is going to be contained in this O+A guideline. Next slide. Even soft seating in a large lounge space, we can still make it work. We don't necessarily need to put separators. We may use plants. There may be some reason to put panels up, but if we just limit the amount of tabling and keep them separated, people are wearing their PPP. This might be one option. Next slide. Bathrooms, they're tricky. The number and head count is sort of kind of based on size. Right now, we're looking at a normal size restroom is taking 2 occupants. Any more than that becomes a little bit dangerous with the aerosoling and the droplets. So the idea is that you don't have full height stalls, you have half height partitions. This might be an approach that you're going to take. And if you have a single stall, well, obviously nobody else comes in there with you. Next slide. Elevators, you know, this is going to be something we're going to be dealing with day one. We don't have partitions up. We don't have any ways to separate. We are looking at ways we can integrate that into elevators, but right now it's, you know, 2 people and a specific queuing going into the elevators. And this is that one notion that I talked to you about, the idea that, you know, you need to kind of limit the number of people going down a corridor. So you may have just a big race loop around a space, and you may not be able to go back on that. So it may take a little longer, but until, if you have a wider corridor, you can actually accommodate. But this is actually a fairly modern building, and the corridor isn't wide enough, and we're still running people around. That's kind of the safest route. Even upon entering the bathroom, we want you to go all the way around to get to the bathroom. Next slide. And that's kind of it. Can't hear you, Paul.
Take it off mute, Paul.
Sorry, Primo, Tina Lee here, one of our attendees, is asking a good question, which is, are you recommending permanent changes in response to COVID-19 or interim solutions that are reversible?
That's a great question. I kind of look at this as something similar, and you know, you've heard this, and sort of everybody refers back to 9/11, because that was one sort of moment where we all kind of took pause and looked at our workplaces and protocols that we had put in place. I think some of these will take. I think some of these are more behavioral. I think some of those countries that have come back from COVID quicker, you know, they know to put the PPP on when something's announced. They know not to touch and shake hands, and they know to wash hands. So some of these I feel are very kind of behavior based, and maybe, you know, that modification may be enough. So as it dissipates, or we have a vaccine, the panels can go away. But a lot of people are not going to feel safe over time. So we're just going to have to see how long we feel comfortable. We did a lot of work to create an open plan and to make agile work a part of the daily language and workplace in America. We don't want to revert back completely, but workplace to me, and I'm sure Jonathan will talk about this, to me it's like it was always about choice and giving the opportunity. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to work in that same place all the time. Where back then you basically stayed in one area and you had one conference room to go to, or one additional space. So these things we don't want to lose. We want to make sure that they kind of stay in the strategy. But the queuing and things like that, I think over time they're going to change. We're going to have better methods of stopping at the threshold. I think the goal is right now, how do we control it upon entering the building and then upon entering the workplace? So it'll change slightly over time, but I think our behaviors need to be modified over the next 6 months to a year.
And Primo, one area that a lot of people are asking about is the meeting conference room.
Sure.
How are you looking at that, and not only for Slack, but for your other clients as well?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. Over the last 9 weeks, we have learned how to use a Zoom meeting. We kind of know its benefits, and we know sort of its drawbacks in terms of trying to iterate and create ideas organically. Zoom, Google Hangouts, they all very binary. Your voice cuts out. You lose sort of the emotion of an in-person meeting. So I think it will change initially. I think we will have a workaround at the office. We're already trying it at O Plus A, bringing people to the office. And we need libraries, we need conferences. You can't do a design without meeting, but you may not be kind of in the same room, or you may be a little bit further away from the table. You'll hang on to your pen. You won't give it to anybody. You'll kind of, again, a lot of this is behavioral. These are things that we don't normally do. We're used to, like, here, you do something and that passing of the pen is kind of a big deal. Now we're going to say, hang on to and just show me your idea and slide it over. Then let me look at it and you put it up. So I think over time, 4 to 5, or the limited number based on size, just has to take hold until we feel comfortable. And then, as mechanical systems and as other ways of decontaminating the air become more prevalent, because right now we're in phase 1 of this. We're stickers and wayfinding, and you don't do this and you wash your hands. Next level will be more intrusive. Mechanical systems, lighting systems, materiality will change. Workstation spacing may be the other way, but I feel like agile work was always about choice. So you never, only 30% were in the workstations anyway. The rest of them were kind of like going throughout the facility if it was done correctly.
A lot of cities and states are having 5 or 6 levels for like reopening.
Yeah.
Are you also looking at different levels? And if so, how many are you up to?
We're up to, we have kind of a 1, 2, and a 3. And the idea is that, 1 is kind of what we're doing now. It's the things that we know work. So signage and wayfinding, and basically helping the organization behave correctly in the space. Number 2 will be, for existing spaces, what can we do in the interim, or what can we do to make those safer? Mechanical, portable devices that can help decontaminate, obviously cleaning, scheduling, and then workstation separation or choice, making sure you have the alternative spaces. And then actually 3 for us is the future. We're already working on those plans now. What does that workstation, how does it morph or mod into the new workstation? And what is the workspace? Will we have more vestibules? Will we have spaces that you kind of hold up before going in? These are all things that they would do in a lab or in a hospital. We may have to take a page from some of those in order to, it's kind of like, there will be a time when this happens again, and we need to be able to click over so quickly that we don't lose 8 weeks or 4 weeks kind of, letting it spread. We need to go to that mode. That's where the other countries have been successful. They trace better. It's just a mode that they automatically go into. And I think that's something that we're going to have to get used to, because this will happen again.
Alicia Hobbs has a good question, which is, how have you supported collaborative spaces for design professionals who typically work as a team and remain the 6-foot distance?
It's been interesting. We have found some great software. So there are some new pieces that are not just kind of push it into the internet and pull it. It is something that you can work dynamically in real time, because I think that's the thing that you lose, is being able to edit and write on the same file. So it becomes like this open document. So we have found some interesting programs that seem to be aiding us. And I have to believe this is going to be the future. I think there's going to be more apps that help aid this. And I think there's generationally, we're just not used to it. I think there's a generation there that will jump into it easily. Now, will something be lost in the, in translation when it goes fully digital? Of course there will be, but there'll be, people that adapt to it easier. Design is a very kind of visceral, touching type of work that you need to be in the same, kind of in the same room. But there is times for solo thinking and really drilling down where you need to be by yourself. So I feel for those moments when you want to brainstorm, you want to kick around a bunch of ideas, you do those in a group and you kind of practice social distancing. As it gets better, that'll dissipate and you'll be able to work closer. But there is a way to work in the same meeting room and just pass notes and move it to the middle and not be all over each other. So I do feel we're doing that at the office. We're actually, because our library, we only have one library. Everybody needs to go to it. So a team will go there and they'll self social distance, but they'll hold things up and put it out there, clean it off, and so you can see it. Again, it's about changing your habits. You can't just pick it up and give it to somebody. You need to be smart enough to wipe it off and hand it to them. It's these kind of new rituals that we're going to develop over time, I think.
Great. Okay, Primo. We still have some more questions, but I want to move on to Jonathan. Jonathan, you've really been looking at workplace strategy really from the inside out, and maybe you can share some of the changes that you're seeing, what you're seeing from your clients, and how you envision the workplace changing.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. It's not lost on me that this is NeoCon Prep Week. It's supposed to be NeoCon Prep Week, right? And as a manufacturer, we're supposed to be running around crazy and trying to get the showroom ready. And our lives have changed. The lives of our audience have changed. And the way that we prepare for work and the physical environment has changed. So, as we prepare for this return to work, we as designers and service providers and manufacturing partners need to consider both short-term and long-term solutions that can help pave the way. And simply put, I feel like it's our job to try to bring joy back to the workplace, and that joy is something that has been missing as people work from home or people work with reduced staffs. And we have to remember that, there are some people that are scared to come back to work, even if they want to come back to work. And, that's something that we really have to take into account. The workplace is going to look and feel different. So what are we able to do to make us have normalcy and create an environment where we feel safe? So at the heart of bringing joy back to the workplace, I think that there are a few strategies that are going to rise to the top, and I'll talk about each of those as I go through the next few slides. And those three strategies have to do with workplace wellness practices, B, densifying tactics, and then the third one is simply engaging in more silos. So I'll try to touch on each of those as I provide some of these examples. From a wellness perspective, there are certainly a lot of things that I think our clients are asking us to address. Simple things like adding more shelving units so that we can have our sanitation supplies out and very public in front of our employees. And that can be accomplished in a number of ways. I think that the way that we look at cafe layouts, the way that food is prepared, the way that it's presented. I hate to say it, I don't think we're going to be seeing the salad bar anytime soon. And I love the salad bar, but I don't know if we're going to be seeing that. And certainly the cleaning protocols throughout. So again, how can we in the physical environment support those physical cleaning protocols with the help of things that we provide? The de-densifying tactics are really, really interesting. It's hard to do, and it's hard to think about when historically we've calculated most things in dollars per square foot. And so there are a lot of tactics that we have to talk about when we're talking about trying to create space in what is oftentimes a very dense environment. The most important thing to remember here is that work from home has been very, very difficult for organizations because of two reasons, really. Either A, they have a culture that does or does not promote work from home, and B, they either have technology that does or does not do a good job of supporting work from home. So if you have a client that is looking to de-densify space, chances are in the past they haven't, right? We've always tried to reduce the amount of square feet per person. So inherently, organizational cultures and their technology usage have really promoted a higher density in the workplace. So, I think there are things that we're going to continue to see throughout. In this example, we're showing the use of storage. I think storage is kind of a polarizing topic when we talk to clients about it. Some are all about personal storage, some are all about non-personal storage and lockers, and some want doors, and some don't want to touch anything. So it's entirely up to your clients, certainly. In this case, we've included a vertical barrier connected to a storage piece in a kind of a typical benching type of look here, right? To create more space between people and hopefully make them feel a little bit more comfortable should they be, within 6 or 7 feet of individuals. I think de-densifying also means changing layouts to personal workspaces. Again, we have a lot of clients that are still one-to-one. For every FTE they hire, they have a personal workstation. So, how are we as designers and support people, how are we providing options that allow the facilities team to reconfigure a space to actually promote greater distance within the same kit of parts that they have become accustomed to using? I think you're going to see much more flexible offerings. I think you're going to see much more mobile offerings in the future. I think a lot of things are going to be on casters and movable, quite frankly. And I think layouts are going to take on a much different task overall. It's interesting, we talk about engaging with more silos. In our organization and a lot of organizations that we're working with, the individuals that we have been accustomed to working with, facilities and interior designers, are still there, but now we've got additional silos. We've got CEOs, and in a lot of cases, we have senior leadership team, and we have human resources. And human resources are getting very, very involved in creating these types of layouts because it is important, and it is their job, quite frankly, to have a plan in place to bring people back to work safely. So we're seeing that quite a bit as well. Primo talked a little bit about permanent versus non-permanent solutions. And I think that we're starting to see requests from our clients where they're saying, we want to do something now, but we're not sure if it's going to last 30 days or 60 days or 3 months or 6 months. So, things like flexible screening products that are height adjustable, where somebody has the autonomy to control the amount of privacy that they have, to control the separation of space. These are things that I think are also going to become more and more relevant, again, as organizations come back to work day after day. The rules seem to change a little bit. We get more information, we get new information, we sit on old information. So that in itself, makes everything kind of a moving target. I'm fortunate to lead a group of individuals here at KI called the Infinity Team. And this team modifies and co-creates products that have, quite frankly, never been invented before for our clients. And we are really getting into more and more of these return to the office type scenarios where we have clients across the country that are saying, we've lived in a benching workplace for 5 years. We've had this open, low panel or no panel environment, and now we have to figure out how to come up with solutions that not only allow us to bring people back to work, but do so in a way where the solutions they don't stand out so much where, quite frankly, they look ugly, or they want to make sure that they fit alongside of their existing standards. So there are so many different screening options that we see out there with so many different materials. I would suggest to you that a couple of months ago, hard surfaces were kind of the big thing, and now we're playing a lot with softer surfaces such as PET materials, and so on and so forth. So, these are just some examples in the next couple of slides that illustrate some of the options that we've been designing alongside of clients throughout the country. The important thing for us as a manufacturing partner to the A&D community, to our end user clients, is that there are resources available to do designs that are very, very specific to meet the needs of a single client. And we do a lot of that. So, and this is another example using a PET material, and again, screens that were created just for one client. And the best part about it is when a client comes to us with an idea and says, I have an idea for a screen, can you do this and that? We can take and we can build off of those ideas, and we can share best practices with designers and end users across the country. So, having a single SKU here, we've got a PET three-sided screen. It's actually one piece and miter cut in the corners, and then we've got some freestanding screens that can accompany those. And then again, we build off of that and take the concept of a single screen, and we said, well, if we wanted to make the screen larger or smaller on demand to either increase or decrease that density, how would we go about doing that? So these are all just ideas that we've come up with over the last couple of months. It's been really 100% of my focus and my team's focus in helping our clients come back. Our job is to be supportive. It's to listen to clients and provide informed guidance without expounding on personal beliefs that might sound divisive, that's for sure. And there's just so much information out there. So we try to help our organizations that we work with figure out what changes have occurred within company culture and then company technology usage to support going back to work. Can't hear you, Paul. Mute. Paul, you're muted.
I always mute because I don't want people to hear all this noise. But thanks, Jonathan. We've got some questions here. First is about the divider screens. How will the divider screens help to contain the virus when we know that airflow can transmit around them? How are you looking at that?
So there's a couple of different ways to look at screens. First of all, I would suggest to you, like up to about 30 days ago, everybody was just concerned about hard surface screens, acrylic, laminate, metal, things that were cleanable. So it really had to do with physical division of space between two or more individuals, and then the ability for the cleaning crew to come in and easily wipe down and clean those spaces. We've learned a lot about this press felt, this PET material, and its cleanability, the fact that it actually kind of absorbs droplets as well, apparently. So now we're seeing a little bit more of a shift in demand to that type of product. Plus the fact that acrylic supplies have been eaten up by every retail place throughout the country. So acrylic's a bit of a tough get right now. So, some of it, quite frankly, it doesn't mean that you potentially shouldn't wear a mask at work. I can tell you where I work, when we are not within our personal workspace, we are asked to wear a mask. And I think, quite frankly, that there's a lot of common sense in that when you are amongst a group of people, a group of coworkers. I think there's some common sense to that. So, just simply having a barrier, everybody, that doesn't prevent anything. And your point that the asker made about airflow, and Primo and I and Paul were talking about this last week. I think air filtration systems, air distribution systems, I think that is going to be a huge, huge, huge deal in workplace going forward.
And this kind of connects to that idea of materiality. A while ago you said you were looking at hard surfaces, now soft surfaces. Teresa Bauer's asking about the provisions for acoustics and cleanability. So what are your thoughts on materiality and solutions to sound and cleanability?
Yeah, I mean, the rules in terms of acoustics haven't changed just because we have a response to a pandemic. So the bottom line is that the harder surface you have, the more you're going to have sound bouncing off of it, and the softer surface you have. There's a reason that these acoustic products have taken off so greatly in the last several years, right? Whether they're ceiling baffles, things that you hang on the wall, or screens in between workstations, they do an excellent job of providing some acoustic, better acoustics in the workplace, especially when we've lowered panels, lowered screens, promoted open environment for the last several years. So the rules haven't changed just because we're in a pandemic. I think that's the main thing to remember.
Another question. What about, are you guys looking at the impact of HVAC systems and how that impacts the products that you're developing?
From my standpoint, probably not as much as Primo. And Primo, you're happy to jump in here. I'm sure that you and your clients, from a comprehensive design service platform, you probably have a better line of sight than that than we do from a furniture standpoint.
You're muted, Primo. Unmute yourself. You're still,
I got it. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Okay. Repeat one. What was it? What were you saying specifically?
HVAC systems.
Oh, okay. Okay. So yeah. So right now, most systems are recirculation systems. That's kind of a majority of what we have in office space today. Newer systems pull in a lot of fresh air. Some companies or buildings have the ability to turn that up. So we need to put something in between that, whether it's a HEPA or a UVGI filter to help clean the air. But right now, the movement of the air is still in question. What happens when you're in a lobby and someone's right next to you and it's drawing from left to right? Do you pull it into the next person? All those things are of concern. So decontamination is a big deal. So we've been looking at a couple of, from the medical industry, people that have done a lot of research in airborne pathogens like tuberculosis. So there are ways you can decontaminate the air via lighting systems. So we're looking at where those might need to be, elevators, bathrooms, places where there may be droplets still up suspended, because we do know that the smaller particles can stay suspended for a while longer. So we kind of have to use mechanical and lighting possibly as a way to mitigate and deactivate the virus.
Okay. I'm getting
coming about. Yeah.
I'm getting a lot of questions that I think both of you can answer. Some are specific to either Jonathan or Primo. So I'll just open this up. Maybe go to the next slide, Jonathan, which is just, we'll just have this discussion that opens up. First one for Jonathan, I think this is more, how are you guys looking at divider height the height of the dividers. Is there an ideal one that you're looking at? And maybe note too.
I would suggest we generally land in between 22 and 29 inches off the top of a work surface. That's a good seated height privacy. There is no magic answer. We have some clients that certainly want to go higher. A client yesterday that said they now want 8-foot screens adjacent to the workstation. Okay, that's their answer. Again, this is the part about having empathy for our client that I was talking about early on here. Okay, there is no guidebook to this. There is no 100% rule book to this. It's imperative that we just listen to our clients, react to what the requests are, ask questions, and then come back. But I will tell you, in general, I've been seeing with our clients, 22 to 29 inches above the work surface seems to be in the sweet spot.
Okay, this is a question for either of you. What are you seeing in terms of as remote working options are provided for employees, what changes do you see for collaboration spaces, for connecting to coworkers still working from home, and then those deciding to return to work?
How do we see that working as a strategy, or what things can we do to aid that?
Yeah, what changes do you see?
Yeah. Well, again, I mentioned it earlier, and I kind of feel like we're at sort of the early stages of what applications are out there. I think there's probably going to be a huge push to create virtual conference rooms via an Oculus or some sort of aided reality piece. Those aren't quite there, but they're actually conference rooms that you can go online, and they're virtual conference rooms. You can have everybody in the room. And it has been proven that there's some people that like to work in that third space or in the avatar in a room. It's part of to me, if you were having a workplace strategy, you had a couple of engineers who wanted to work in that fashion and they did it successfully, then why not? It's about choice. It's about what they feel they need to have around them in order to work. How are we going to do it initially? We are doing it. It is a little bit slower. The shorthand and all the shortcuts that we have when we're in person are still being learned. So I think over time you will be able to do it. Right now it seems like, I think probably the biggest thing my designers would tell you right now, they're tired because it takes probably 3 or 4 times as long to design something when you're not in the same room as when you're in the same room. The iteration and the organic flow of design doesn't happen over a meeting like this. It becomes very stifled in this method. But I do feel there are probably ways around it, and there will be some new applications that help sharing design thoughts, sketches, and little moves that you normally get when you're in a meeting. So I think there's some places for it to grow, but I do feel we'll get the hang of it, just like we get the hang of, everybody. We didn't use FaceTime. We didn't use these things as much as we did. Now we are forced to use all these different meeting programs in order to do our daily work.
Yeah, I think organizations are like I stated at the beginning, culture and technology, right? So I think organizations are going to be forced to make sure that those spaces for interaction and ideation do have adequate video conferencing equipment, and it can't just be something that only 2 people in the whole company know how to work on a day in, day out.
Right.
So that, and then from a cultural standpoint, again, if it's a room that normally holds 15 people, guess what? It's probably only going to be able to hold 7, and you're probably going to have to sit a little bit further apart, and you may have to wear masks because that's the policy, and there is going to be an adaptation. People are going to have to learn how to adapt to those new rules for sure.
Yep.
So do you guys see AR and VR taking off finally?
I think this is a good moment for it. I think it's very accessible. I do think there are moments in the design where, yes, it'd be fun to be in the same model and point to something and have some sense of scale or gauge of things. That's the problem. You can kind of hold up drawings and you can do little things, but it's not as easy. So I would say that's where it could aid us the most.
Yeah, definitely technical industries like architectural design and manufacturing as well. You know, to be able to have a model up that is virtually live, right in front of you, is a really big deal. And you're right, holding up a piece of paper is it's not the way to go. So
right.
I would suggest that there will be some new products that come quicker to market as a result of this. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then, Primo, this one specifically, it's from Aisha for you guys at Studio Plus A. Are you planning to transition away from remote work once it's safe to return to the office in person? Or how are you managing remote work moving forward?
So, yeah, we were fortunate to keep everybody. So all 40 plus designers are working. We have had projects that didn't go on hold, job sites that didn't close down, and others that did and paused, and we shifted to other things. So we are adapting to this new normal of how to create. We have sort of modified the office in terms of a rally point, a place where the library is, a place where you can kind of share things that need to be physically shared, that you can't just hold up on a screen and say, does this finish look right? Does this scale look right? So I think the things that are not possible to do in the virtual world, we do at the office. So the office may become that. It may be a series of work rooms that are specific, dedicated to a team. We're going to exercise new protocols in terms of away teams versus local teams and support teams. They will be sequestered off initially. We don't want to cross. We were already planning that when we were ready to go on work from home. It was going to separate away teams from teams that are local and try to keep them separated. And then if they traveled, they had a 14-day sort of self-quarantine.
Jonathan, I got a question from John Dye, who's asking if you think that manufacturers can provide recommended antivirals, which are comparable with their products. He's saying that his clients are concerned about expenditures on furnishings and how best to clean while also protecting them.
So by antiviral, I'm kind of assuming what he's talking about are antimicrobial.
Right.
That has become a real slippery slope for textile companies, for hard surface manufacturers. The ones that do that best, quite frankly, work in those lab environments. So there are products that are specifically built into lab environments. I would suggest that most contract furniture manufacturers don't consider themselves to be experts on antimicrobial. We get cleaning guidelines on the products that we put on surfaces, whether they're horizontal and vertical, and we follow the recommendations from those manufacturers. Some claim to be antimicrobial, but I would suggest that most of them are just cleanable, and there are bleach ready type of cleaning agents and so forth that can help to do that sort of thing. So
we have a couple of questions about plumbing. Earlier in your Slack project, you showed the bathroom. Do you have any suggestions for shared washroom spaces between tenants and access in terms of cleaning and other things?
Yeah, when you have a common area restroom, if the partitions aren't full height and you can't control the air in the single partition, if they have half height partitions and just really more or less barriers, you're going to have to limit the number, and that's going to be based on the size of it. Everything touchless, obviously, limit the amount of people in there. Toilet lids, things that when it aerosols doesn't get into the atmosphere. You got to control a lot of that now. So rooms can become a very, very a place of transmission. So we gotta make sure that we exercise a lot of cleaning, putting the right devices in there. That might be a great opportunity for filters, HEPA filters, or moving the air up and out, or running it over a UV-GI light, something to that effect, or there's other light bands that can actually, you turn it on and it can kill, but it's not totally proven on surfaces. So, and their direct line of sight and some of those things. So again, it is sort of a new type of thing that we're dealing with in order to get everything deactivated in that space if something was to catch on it. So we're just limiting the numbers as much as we can right now. And then a lot of cleaning.
And then is there a plumbing code issue involved in taking some toilets and sinks offline?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's codes for everything. Number of people in the elevator, number of people in the lobby and the staircase. And in a restroom, usually that's governed by the amount of people on the floor, the amount of fixtures that you need to have on that floor, whether it's men, women, unisex, non-gender neutral. I think right now we're looking at, is there a way to modify and add more privates so that we don't have to limit 1 or 2 people in a very large bathroom core that was designed for 10 or 15 people that now can only take 2 or 3 for safety. So there's ways to look at retrofitting those and making them safer, and more people can occupy if you put single full height stalls.
Sure. Jonathan, we've got a couple questions about screens. So first question from Heather: have you developed a screen that can saddle on top of an existing panel without damaging the panel? And how high is the screen recommended to be? And she has 66 inches as a question mark.
Yeah, we have. We've created bridge units that are meant to sit over the top of existing systems. And so yes, we have co-created solutions with a couple of clients in the last 30 days, and we're actually looking to mock it up here in the next couple of weeks. So if that listener has a specific request, she can reach out to me. In terms of the height, again, the heights that we are playing around with, generally total height anywhere between 56 and 66 inches high. And it really just, again, depends on the need of the client, but that 56 to 66 seems to be a sweet spot.
And Johanna Jablonski has a question: with higher screens over 64 inches in height, aren't you having to start having issues with airflow?
Well, I guess it depends on the height of the ceiling, and
Okay.
the quality of the air distribution system.
Yeah.
But no different than any other. They're all interdependent on each other, right? So there are reasons why people lower panels and reasons why people have higher panels, and a lot of times, yes, the air circulation system and the HVAC system might be a reason to make a screen lower or a screen higher, certainly, absolutely.
And at the point of, this is for both of you, at the point of cleanability, are you finding manufacturers are testing more cleaning agents, or what is the foreseeable plan of action for this to ensure products can withstand, the stronger cleaning agents?
Yeah, it's ongoing. Again, the first recourse for us is to revert back to our vendor partners. So the textile companies, the laminate companies, the hard surface companies, and we really followed their guidance on cleanability. But if there are things that are not from one of those vendors, we have a test lab and we're able to conduct some testing internally ourselves.
Jonathan, we had a question about your sanitation station. Where was that exactly, where you were presenting that?
That one was a mock-up, but we're actually getting ready to put one right outside of our cafeteria here at KI. But that was a request that came in from a client. They said, we've got these sanitation stations that they're normally manufacturing facilities, and they might put them up on tack boards or something like that. But they had one that was, it's just cardboard, and it had a magnet on the back. So they wanted a magnet screen that they could move around. We had a topper on it, which allowed us to put a vinyl applique on that topper. So it was very clearly a sanitation station. It was a very, very simple product modification for us to do, and worked out pretty well.
Primo, can you tell us what level 1 is as the last question?
Level 1 is really a lot of directional wayfinding and setting up of protocols in the space. So where you would queue, where you would hold people, distancing lines, markers, indicators, and then a lot of it would be, as Jonathan mentioned, cleaning stations, temperature stations, PPP distribution, rules of the building. But we kind of want to do this with the idea also of making you feel, I mean, it's hard to feel joy and it's hard to feel sort of not being apprehensive or in sort of like tense in the situation. So we're trying to also devise decompression areas, places to kind of relax a little bit, because it is oftentimes, when you go to an airport, you go to a place that's a highly dense or kind of stressful situation. You want to create moments of relief. So that experience and joy, or a moment of joy, can come back in. So we're not just all just looking over our shoulder and worrying about every single thing. You're going to know that the building lobby has been scrubbed. You're going to know that the common area has been taken care of. You're going to know that the mechanical systems. So there may be a grading system. We're thinking that there's possibly a note that says this lobby has been cleaned 2 hours ago. This restroom was cleaned 10 minutes ago. So a lot of messaging out until we can get all the other infrastructure changed.
Good. Okay. I'm getting the signal that we got to end the show. So thanks, everyone. Thanks, Primo, Jonathan. Thanks, NeoCon, and continue to watch the other panels this month. And see you next year in person at NeoCon.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.